You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hi, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. I have with me today a woman who's going to share quite a story. It's Anna Ditchburn. Anna is a remarkable woman. She is now a coach dealing with women who've gone through much of what she's gone through. And it's a story, hang on to your seats and get ready for a ride because this is something beyond belief. And Anna, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story with us today.
Gail, thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast, to your amazing podcast, and for providing this space to share my story. I really appreciate it.
Oh, that's great. So I'll give you guys a little hint and then we'll get right into it. So you've heard many stories already if you've been listening to my podcast about childhood abuse or childhood trauma and how that affects choices both in your teen years and as a young adult, and how the guests that I've had on were able to alchemize that experience and come out a whole person and come out with the need, the desire, the ability to help others who go through something similar. Well, Anna's story is one that we could make a movie about. It starts at a very young age with abuse um, that was ignored in her family, and one that took her a while to wrap her arms around. So, Anna, why don't we share your story?
Thank you so much, Gail. What a wonderful introduction. When you hear those things about yourself, you're like, damn, this is me. 3 years ago, I could not even imagine that I will be on people's podcast sharing my story because, you know, and for your listeners, who is who is listening to this podcast right now, you might think like abuse, it's so shameful, it's so scary, it's so painful to share, to listen, even to tell your own story. That was me. I was like, how can you even tell what was happening in your childhood to anyone? Because fear of judgment is much bigger than fear of telling the story. And my story started, Gail, when I was 4 years old, when my biological father left our family and never returned. And so my mom became a 24 years old, a mother of two. I also had a 9 months old brother at those time. I was during the Russian economic depression. We struggled a lot, and financially and physically and mentally. There was no one to help us, really. And now I'm realizing, 24 years old, my mom was still a child, literally. But 6 years, she she did the best job she could afford. She knew. And when I was 10 years old, my mom met my stepfather, and we thought, finally, the knight in shining armor, the protector, the supporter will be in our family. I was so happy to have a father because I didn't realize how I was missing a father figure in my life. And but few months later, he revealed his own true face, Gail. He revealed how horribly abusive and controlling and manipulative he was. He was an army guy and very disciplinarian. So me and my brother we quickly learn how to walk on the eggshell, and we quickly realize that kids' emotions mean nothing to him. And I've realized that I have to be very careful, and I have to obey all the rules without any questioning. When my stepfather literally beat like straight out of my younger brother, who was only six years old at those times. And when I saw this picture, when my stepfather grabbed his leather belt and dragged my younger brother to another bedroom, locked the door behind him, and hearing how my brother was begging for help and yelling and screaming, it made me, I really got scared at those points. And it made me to think I'm going to do everything possible just to not be in those rooms. And my mom got scared as well. She didn't stop his horrendous parenting, because at those points in Russia, it was very shameful to be a single mother of two. So she gave him all the power in our family. And I remember she was saying, just, you can do whatever you want, just stay. Because she didn't want to let him go. And she didn't realize that it wasn't normal at those time. So we learn how to obey the rules very quick. And when I was 15 years old, that's when the sexual abuse started. But being conditioned, do not say anything against my father. I remember I freeze when everything started. I freeze, and I haven't done anything at those points. And it caused me many years of blaming and um, self-destructing, self-destroying behavior, because I was literally blaming myself for not being able to do anything. For me, it in my brain, it meant if I didn't do anything, if I didn't yell, scream, or push back, it means I was agreed to this. And so that was a very, very shameful moment for me. That was the catalyst for me not being able to tell my story. Because if people would ask me, "Did you fight back? Did you do something?" How can I look at them and say no?
Well, you were conditioned for 5
Yeah,
years to
I've
behave.
realized it later.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I want for your listeners to realize something that I've learned during my healing process. It is never your fault. Trust me, it is never your fault. Even if you are 15 years old girl who is obsessed with your stepfather, for example, and you just naked jump in on his lap, the responsible man, a good man, would always put you aside, like push you away and say, "Hey, I think you have a problem here. Go in and put your dress on and let's talk." You know what I mean? The perpetrator is always responsible because they are older. They're older than us. And fast forward, the sexual abuse was happening for 6 years. It resulted in 2 pregnancies and in 2 forced illegal abortions. When I was 21, I was feeling very suicidal because I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep the secret from my mom, from my family, and from my boyfriend as well, that I fall in love with so deeply. And I wanted to stay honest with him. And so I left the house, and my stepfather said, "If you're gonna leave the house, I'm gonna expel your mother, because if you're gonna leave, I don't need your either." And I said, "I'm leaving anyway." Because what I've noticed, Gail, when I was fighting back, my stepfather actually threatened me. He said, "If you would tell anyone I'm going to destroy your mother's and your brother's life. And I felt like I have to protect my family. I have to sacrifice my own needs and my own life to protect my family. But then later I realized that my mom really doesn't want to be safe or protected. She was so codependent on this person. She would she would be like a slave to him. The reason I'm telling you this story is you you will understand. So when I left the house, I I met my first husband in a couple of years and I moved to Australia. And I honestly thought I'm gonna finally move away. But you know what happened? I brought all the baggage with me, all the baggage. And when I wanted to become a mom, I was I started having miscarriages. So one miscarriage after another and after another and after another. Okay, fast forward, I realized that my husband was literally the person like my stepfather. I literally got married my stepfather. He turned out to be very abusive, verbally and physically. I could even predict what my ex-husband would say, because that's what my stepfather would say about me. I we divorced, but in the meantime, I became a very suicidal because I was married for 5 years. My relationship didn't work, and I didn't want to leave. I was so afraid to know what other people would think of me, that I'm a failure, that I couldn't, save my marriage or be a good wife. And I thought that only if I just dress better or behave better or please him better, he would stay. But you know what? That's not the case. That's not the case. And I realized that I was repeating my mom's past when she completely surrendered and gave all her power away. And that was me. The reason she didn't kill herself because she had 2 kids. I didn't have a reason to be on this planet. So anyway, a few years later, I found the man of my dreams, and he was the first man who I told my story. I was having my 11th miscarriage when the doctor called me aside and he said, Anna, this is nothing to do with your partners because you had 2 partners, you had the miscarriages from, and it's nothing to do with your physical body. We can't find any physical reason. It's something to do with your mind and with your heart. And I knew exactly what it was, Gail. That's why I told my story to my husband, to my second husband. Plus, the way how he was conducting himself from the beginning, he he was so open and honest about his past that he made me safe. He made me feel safe being with him and to share what was happening in my world. That the way he reacted, Gail, it was the way I was always dreamed about. He was so supportive. He was so loving. He was so understanding. And it's because he went through some horrendous childhood in his own. This is the power of sharing your story, Gail.
Right.
Even if it's not publicly, but with some people that you trust, because he allowed me to open up. And that's how my healing journey started. I went through psychologists, shamans, psychic specialists, NLP specialists, like you name it. I went through all of them. And the hypnotherapy helped me a lot. The hypnotherapy was the only therapy that literally brought me back inside myself. Because my life was constantly running, 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 chasing some success, chasing some joy, chasing some um uh like calmness and how to say even the like feeling happiness. But but hypnotherapy really showed me that the happiness is inside us. It's everything is inside us. It's just covered in these traumatic experiences and stuck emotions. So, and I was able to forgive my perpetrator, Gail. I forgave him for doing this to me. I forgave my biological father for leaving me. I forgave my mom for not being able to protect me when I needed her the most. And the most importantly, I forgave myself because I realized that what was happening at those time, it was just my protection mechanism. I was purely protecting myself and my family. And now I'm helping people to do the same, to overcome their trauma and find a peace and happiness within that, within themselves.
So it's really interesting, Anna, that you said you found that person inside of you who you really are. Um, when we go through the healing process, we're not healing a wounded child. The child is just waiting for you to get all of that garbage out of the way so she or
Exactly.
he can come out and play, right? And so the child isn't wounded, the child is smothered, hidden, you know, ignored or whatever, but the child is just waiting for you patiently to see her
Mm-hmm.
or to see him, right?
It's, you know how it looks. Imagine you have a backpack and you're going for a hike and you stuff lots of things inside, like lots of things, um, some things that you don't really even need, but this is your first hike, so you don't know what you're gonna need. And then you start hiking, and the longer you go, the longer you walk, the heavier this bag becomes. It's amazing because at the beginning it was like, huh, like whatever, 15 pounds, not a big deal. But the longer you walk, the heavier and heavier it becomes. And then you start realizing, hold on, I have this um a big bottle of soap, which I don't really need, body wash. Like, who cares? And you start throwing, oh, that feels lighter. And then you start throwing another things like a, a toy or something, and then another thing, and then another thing. And suddenly you feel so much better. And suddenly the walk becomes more enjoyable. You know what I mean? And suddenly you left with the very necessary things for your walk. And this is the core when this is like your inner child. You don't need all those stuck emotions. But because we can't process them when things are happening, they just stuck in our backpack and we keep carrying them.
I use the analogy of so in the Christmas story, the very beginning of Christmas story, the ghost of Marley shows up. And Marley shows up with all of these change and all these suitcases and all of this stuff that he's dragging through eternity, right? And
Hmm.
like just drop one of those suitcases, just take off one of those change, and then just leave another suitcase. So it's very similar how I look at it, very similar to you, and that this is just stuff that you're carrying with you
Hmm.
that's past stuff. And we get into the habit of hanging on to something, and we do it unconsciously, and it's very obvious, something that happened when I was 8, something happened when I was 12, but even something that happened 2 weeks ago,
Oh yeah.
right? Right. And we have to be able to be conscious of not being present, right? And bringing even bringing yesterday forward does not serve the moment of today, right? And so I love that and I love that you said you used all of these different approaches because it's not one approach. There is no right answer, there is no wrong answer, right? It really takes multiple modalities to get underneath, right?
You're right, Gail. There is no one answer. You never know what's what exactly will impact your life. What I would say to your listeners, keep looking, keep asking for help until you get it, until you feel like you've connected with this person. Because I thought I dealt with my past trauma. I was listening some motivational speakers, I was listening some webinars, trainings, and so I thought, okay, fine, I'm perfectly, healed right now. But when I was losing my pregnancy, something was triggering inside, really triggering. Plus, I was a huge people pleaser. Plus, I was working for 10, 11 hours a day trying to escape in my work. Um, Plus, I didn't know how to speak up. Plus, I was avoiding people's talks because I was shut down so many times. Are you there?
I'm here. So can you hear me? Oh, Anna.
Okay.
Okay, so we're recording. So so yeah, so you were looking to, I know for me, so I don't want to say for you, but I know for me with my trauma that I was living with, I was looking for external validation. I was looking externally to prove that I was good enough, to prove that I was worthy, to prove that I belonged, right? And again, I worked 12, 13 hours. I brought work home with me. I rose
Mm-hmm.
to the top of any company I was in because I busted my butt, right? See how good I am, see how smart I am, see how perfect I am. But I still had to I still had to go home and face me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I'm actually writing the book, and the chapter I was working today was um, seeking external validation. I was interesting. It's so interesting that you mentioned it because what I learned, Gail, we are seeking external validation when we don't get so much love and attention and validation in our childhood from our parents, particularly for the girls from our fathers. And imagine my father left when I was 4. So no one told me how beautiful I am, how good I am, how worthy I am. I literally had to learn it from other people. I had to listen to other people, what they think of me to build my own perception about myself. And so I was so vulnerable for any feedback or any criticism that I would get from people. It could destroy me, really. I was so afraid to make a mistake. I was so afraid to do something bad so people don't like me, you know, so people like me. What I've learned, Gail, but when we have a very strong foundation, and if your childhood was similar to mine, when you didn't get a validation from your parents, now become your own parent. Become your own parent. Start building the strong foundation within you, who you are. And I will tell you the secret. People will always think who you are or how you look like based on your opinion about yourself. Everything comes from inside out. If you think, oh, I'm a little bit like fat or ugly or my nose is a bit too big, the universe, the people will always give you the proof of this. I would be like, oh, Anna, your nose is a bit too big, or you're a little bit too fat today, or something. Will always project from inside out. But when I started to build my own foundation, who I am, who I want to be, how do I look like, when I got a strong picture about myself, I started actually to see the evidences and I started hearing from people, oh, Anna, you look so beautiful. You look so feminine, or like so magnetic, so positive. That's because I know who I am. I know my own value. Took me years to understand how can you love yourself? How can you build your foundation, your picture about yourself if you clearly look at the mirror and you're not perfect or you're not skinny enough? Like, how can you say that you're beautiful? So took me a long time, but believe me, when you take responsibility about your like for yourself, that's where the magic starts.
Oh, I love that. Responsibility, accountability, and vulnerability.
Intentionally creating your life, intentionally choosing the thoughts that will serve you well,
Yes.
and
And
just dismiss those ones that don't serve you well.
right. And just dismiss them. Um, so and I do need to address the affirmations. And anyone who's listened to me knows that I do not like affirmations because if you don't believe them, your subconscious starts thinking you're a liar and doesn't listen to you anymore. Right. And so,
100%. 100%. You can't say yourself, oh, I'm beautiful. With this, Gail, I used another technique because you are 100% right. Neither your neither your mind will believe you like, yeah, whatever. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Um, there is a technique that I've learned from my teacher. She's an amazing woman, Farewell. Ask yourself, what is the truer than the truth? What is the truer than the truth? And I'll give you an example. I wanted to become a great communicator, but clearly I wasn't there at all. I would black out. I would forget what I'm talking about. I couldn't tell my story, but I wanted to become one. And she said, Anna, what is the truer than the truth? And for me, it was, I am learning how to become a great speaker. I am learning all the situations, all the people, everything comes into my life to help me to learn how to become a great speaker. This is the truer than the truth. It's not a mantra, but and every time I would um fuck up something, I would like, okay, I'm not going back into my you are just a bad speaker. The situation is given me to learn something to become a better speaker. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
That's the shift.
That's the
That's
shift.
a baby step.
And
That's
so the empowering process, right, um,
mm-hmm,
is about my approach is empowering questions. So
mm-hmm,
your subconscious mind will answer a question, and empowering questions are very specifically structured, and they're structured looking for suppositions that are based on truth, anchored in the present, right? And it would be something such as, what more can I do right now to be sure that I'm the best speaker there is today?
I love it.
Right? And your subconscious mind will go, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
what more? Okay, so you are doing this and you are doing that. So what more can I do? Okay. And you start to open up your reticular activation system and you're able to see what is there that you weren't seeing before and see, oh, I can practice on that. I can go outside and, we have like parks. I can go to a park and, start speaking on a park and practice, and people can walk
Yes.
by and they'll ignore me, but I can learn how to project, right? So there are
Yes.
things that you can do, but your mind will look for them.
I love this question, Gail, because you have to be very careful what kind of questions you ask yourself. For example, there is a difference. What else can I do today to become a greater speaker?
Right.
Or versus, what's wrong with me?
Right.
Why am I so stupid?
Right.
Guess what? Your subconscious will start looking for the answers on the question that you are
Right. Oh,
asking.
you're stupid. Okay, well, here's
Yes.
evidence, and here's
Oh, yeah. Here is why you're stupid. Or here is what you need to do right now.
Right.
And you know what I love how you say, uh, listen to your intuition, because your mind and your conscious mind are very loud and very talkative. Your intuition very quiet, and it doesn't explain anything. So to find the answer, you really need to be quiet and listen to. If you feel like go for a walk, go for a walk. This is your intuition. Because your mind will start, why should I go for a walk? It's 2 a.m. Excuse me, it's cold, it's rainy outside. You never know. Maybe you will go and you will see the fire somewhere, or or the helicopter will crush your house or something. The the intuition is very quiet and never explained. Follow your intuition, and if you feel like going for a walk, go for a walk, because that's where you get into the state of calmness. Um, because during the stress time, your left brain and your right brain, actually opposite, left brain and right brain start disconnecting during the stressful time, and you can't think properly. When you go for a walk, when you calm yourself down, guess what? Your brain starts connecting, and then all these wonderful ideas just start coming into your
Right.
head.
And I call that getting into flow. Right.
Yes.
You allow yourself to get into flow. What happens with me, and it happened to us today, I have a zillion stories, right? And
Mm-hmm.
either through my clients or through myself, and I will frequently say, "Oh, I have a story to share," and share the story. And the person I'm with always says, "It's funny you brought that up. I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
about that today." It's not funny I brought that up. I'm listening to my intuition, which tells me, Gail, tell this story. And I'm like, okay, I'll tell this. All right, I'll tell this one. Right. And it seems disconnected to me. But as soon as
Mm-hmm.
I'm done, the person I'm with is like, oh, well, I'm glad that you shared that with me because, right?
Amazing, yes.
Yes. Yes. And that's listening to your intuition, right? And there are times when I don't, and I will literally say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. I knew I should have listened." Or I do listen and something wonderful happens and I'll say thank you. So when it comes to, being grateful or gratitude, I thank me, my intuition, right, for showing up, and I thank me for paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah. And sometimes out loud, and people think I'm crazy. Who are you talking to? No one.
Talking to yourself is so important. It's so important, because that you have all the answers. Your subconscious knows everything. Your mind doesn't. Your mind thinks it knows everything and controls everything. Your subconscious doesn't think but controls everything.
Right. And that's where the peace, the serenity, and I don't know about you, but when people say, "What are you doing that's so different?" You're not, because I'm not the same person I was even 2 months ago. I am evolving on a fast track right now. And I'll just say I don't know because there's no language
Mm-hmm.
for
Just a feeling.
for being. There are no words, and trying to put it into words. As soon as you try that, you've just disconnected from what really is going on
Mm-hmm.
because there's no words to explain what it's like to get that
And
kind
you
of
know,
direction.
Gail, talking about intuition, in September 2021, I had this huge desire to tell my mom what was happening because she didn't know. So they divorced when I was 21. She didn't even realize what happened, why my stepfather suddenly just, throws her out of the house. And she was waiting for him for all these years. She's been waiting for him, trying to get back with him, not understanding what she did wrong. She was blaming herself. And my intuition just was saying, when I actually stopped ignoring my intuition, it was saying to me, tell her, set her free, set her free. And I was in Australia this time, and I called her on the phone, and I started to cry. She said, Anna, why are you crying? I said, Mom, I have to tell you something, but I don't know how to tell. She said, why? I said, you probably will hate me. So tell me, please. And when I told her that I was sexually abused by my stepfather, she paused for a moment, and she said, Anna, why didn't you tell me before? I said, I was so afraid that I'm gonna lose you, that you're not gonna understand me, that you're gonna hate me for what's happened. And she said, Anna, you are my daughter, and even if the whole world will be against you, I will always stay by your side. Gail, 20 years of my life went in front of my eyes, and I thought, oh my God, why I've been waiting for such a long time to tell her.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was always some wall between us. It was always something between us. I couldn't connect with her on a much deeper level. So this secret, was holding me back. And the reason I was telling you the story at the beginning, how she was just codependable on my father. He became a mama bear, Gail. She turned into this completely like full of confidence and rage woman. She nearly killed him back in Russia, and she pressed criminal charges against him straight away. And I had to fly from Australia to Russia to testify against my stepfather. And I didn't know, to be honest, how I'm gonna look at her eyes when I was coming back home. But the moment when I saw her, the moment when she hugged me was magical because I had to do all this healing without her, even though I wanted to, just held her, jump into her hands, being comfort, comforted by her, but I didn't know how she would react.
Right.
Neither I was um, stable enough to take any reaction from her. But the moment she hugged me, we just created this strong bond. And I know not many people would have this opportunity with their parents. But
Right.
I want to tell you, it doesn't need to be your closest friends or family to hold your hand and to go through this journey. Find someone who went through this journey, who knows how you feel, who knows what is happening inside you, and who knows what to do, who can hold your hand and take you through this very dark and cold and scary tunnel to go through. Because on the other side, you will see the sky will be much bluer, the trees will be much greener. The I started feeling, I returned my feelings again
Mm-hmm.
when I went through. My mom was fighting for me to the end. The case didn't go to the court because it was such a long time. We didn't have evidence of this. But you know what I did? I've realized we don't have a childhood sexual abuse support survivors support in my hometown. So I contacted the biggest publisher and I asked them, would you be happy to publish my story? Two magazines told me, oh, no, no, this is too heavy. And only one journalist said, I will. The article went viral, Gail, viral. And I left my email address saying, girls, if you are going through a similar situation and you have no one to talk to, send me an email. My inbox exploded with stories similar to mine. And one story really struck me. It was a woman in her 40 years old. She got pregnant at 16 from her father. And she was so ashamed to tell who was the father of her child that she left the house at 16. She was sleeping on the couches of her friends. But after she gave a birth, no one didn't want her in their house. Sometimes she would sleep in abandoned houses or under the bridge with her newborn baby. And she said, you know what? I survived. My daughter is beautiful. I love her so much no matter what happened. It's not her fault. But I have no courage to tell my story like you did. I realized, wow, how many women and men are out there who are still suffering in silence. And just recently, a year and a half after this, I received another letter from a father whose daughter was sexually abused by her stepfather, by her mom's husband.
Mm-hmm.
They were going through the similar situation. But reading her story, it felt for me like I was reading my story. I couldn't believe it. And they asked me for help because they said, we don't know what to do. It still makes an impact. So my point is, someone, before I started telling my story, my husband told me, Anna, even if the one person out there who needs to hear your story, it's worth hearing.
Right.
And I found this one person. I found this one person, Gail, a 12 years old girl who went through um, sexual molestation when she was 11. And by hearing my story, she opened up for the very first time. I invited her to my podcast to share her story. She's a powerhouse. So this is my long answer.
And what is beautiful, Anna, is the fact that yes, it took a doctor, a pediatrician, an OBGYN of all things to tell you you're not healed and
Mm-hmm.
you need to be healed for you
Mm-hmm.
to wake up. We don't know what that wake up moment is or who that wake up person is. And what is also fabulous is that you had a mate, partner, who
Mm-hmm.
was there to support you through that process. To go through that alone is very, very difficult. Very, very
Gail,
difficult.
I've manifested my husband, my now husband.
Yes.
I literally, when I was in a huge depression, I my mom I studied psychology because living with my stepfather, she wanted to know how to deal with all those narcissistic behaviors and abusive behaviors. So she immersed me in psychology since I was 10.
Hmm.
Uh, and I knew one technique of writing the list of your ideal and then just insert your ideal partner, your ideal house, your ideal life, your ideal job. And so I remember I just sat down and I wrote an explicit list of my ideal partner. And I literally described how he looks like, what he liked, what he disliked, how I feel next to him, what kind of relationship I have with his family, what kind of relationship he has with my family, what we love doing together. In my list, I wrote he's a bold, he's a New Zealander, he is very honest, very loyal, he is very charismatic, he has an amazing sense of humor, uh, he's very supportive. Gail, when he stopped me on the street of Melbourne, a bold New Zealander, plus I wanted who doesn't drink, smoke, or gambling or doing drugs. Who doesn't drink, gambling, smoking, or doing drugs. He's been sober for nearly 7 years. We've been together for 4 years. I was like, tick, 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 tick. How is this even possible? So I wanted this person. I knew I deserved this person. And the second thing after the list, I truly believe that he exists.
Right.
And he does.
Right. And this is the thing about the mind. You have to truly believe it
Mhm.
and believe that you deserve it. Right.
Empowering process.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. So, Anna, if someone does want to get in touch with you, they hear their story, how would they do that?
You can find me on my website. It's annaditchburn.com. It's ANNADITCHBURN.com. You can find me on Instagram, Mrs. Anna Ditchburn, or Facebook as well, Mrs. Anna Ditchburn. You can find me on YouTube. My podcast was world's best trauma recovery podcast. But now I'm rebranding. It's called Happy on the Inside. So everything starts from the inside, including happiness. So watch out for this. And otherwise, I'm sure I would love to hear some comments from people about our podcast, because Gail, what you do is something amazing, truly amazing, and truly valuable. Giving an opportunity for people to share their stories, because you never know who needs to hear
Right.
your story, my story, and stories of your guests. You never know whose life you're gonna change or save. So
Right. And
thank you
that
so
and
much.
that is the whole point of this. And people like Anna, I mean, Anna, what a blessing for me to have met you. And I want to thank you and everybody, those of you who are listening. If a question came up, absolutely put it in the comment. Anna or I will get back to you. We might even do a podcast on it, right? Depending on what your question is. If this resonated with you, thumbs up, let us know. By all means, subscribe so you hear about other episodes. If you know someone who maybe needs to hear this, please, please, please share this out with them. Our stories are being told because it's time for the silence to stop, and we want to be here to help you. So, Anna, thank you so much for your time and for being with us.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.